History unveiled. This man lived in an airport for 18 years. With nowhere to go, it became his home. This is his incredible true story.
Imagine walking into an airport and never leaving. Not for a few hours, not for a day, not for a week, but for years. Imagine
Sleeping on the same airport bench night after night, watching thousands of strangers arrive and watching them leave. Families rushing toward their flights, couples saying goodbye, people returning home, while you remain in exactly the same place. This sounds like the plot of a movie, but one man actually lived this way for almost 18 years.
His name was Mehran Karimi Nasseri, and his home became one of the busiest airports in Europe. This is the extraordinary true story of the man who lived in an airport. And this is History Unveiled.
How did he end up there? Mehran Karimi Nasseri was born in Iran in 1945.
In the 1980s, he became caught up in a complicated immigration and documentation problem while traveling through Europe.
His journey eventually brought him to France.
And in 1988, Nasseri found himself living inside Charles de Gaulle Airport, near Paris.
At first, nobody expected him to stay there for years. But something that seemed temporary slowly became his entire life.
Nasseri lived in Terminal 1. He had a particular place where he kept his belongings. His possessions were limited.
A few bags, some papers, books and newspapers, and the clothes he wore. Airport workers became familiar with him.
Some knew him by name. Passengers saw him sitting there, day after day, month after month, year after year. Imagine the strange routine.
He would wake up inside the airport, wash, eat, read, write, watch people rushing through the terminal.
Then, when night came, he would still be there. The airport had become his home.
Over time, Nasseri became a familiar figure at Charles de Gaulle. Airport employees helped him in different ways. People brought him food.
Some gave him newspapers. Others simply stopped to talk. He became known by different names. But one thing remained constant.
He was always there. For the travelers passing through the airport, their journey might last a few hours. For Nasseri, the journey seemed to have no destination.
How could this happen? So why didn't he simply walk out? This is where the story becomes complicated. Nasseri's legal status and travel documents became tangled in a complicated international immigration situation.
According to reports, he had lost or lacked the documents necessary to travel normally. French authorities eventually gave him legal options that could have allowed him to leave the airport.
But Nasseri did not leave. His situation had become deeply connected to his identity and his life inside the terminal.
And by then, the airport wasn't simply a place where he was stuck. It had become the only home he knew.
For years, Nasseri's strange situation remained mostly known around the airport. Then, journalists began telling his story.
Newspapers around the world became fascinated by the man who lived in an airport. Television crews came looking for him. People wanted to know, who was this man? Why was he still there? And perhaps the biggest question of all,
what would it feel like to spend nearly 2 decades watching the rest of the world come and go? His story eventually reached Hollywood. Filmmakers were inspired by his unusual life. In 2004, the movie The Terminal, starring Tom Hanks, was released. The film was fictionalized, but Nasseri's extraordinary experience was one of its inspirations. Then, after approximately 18 years, Nasseri finally left the airport terminal. Think about that. When he arrived, the world was very different. Mobile phones were not what they are today. The internet was still in its infancy. Technology had transformed. People who had been children when he arrived were now adults. And yet, Nasseri had spent much of that time in the same airport. But his story didn't end there. After leaving the airport, he lived in different places and continued to receive attention because of his unusual life. Years later, Nasseri returned to Charles de Gaulle Airport. But this time, he wasn't trapped there. He was simply visiting.
And eventually, his remarkable journey came to an end. Nasseri died in 2022 at Charles de Gaulle Airport.
The place that had been his home for so many years.
His story remains one of the strangest examples of how a place designed for people to pass through, an airport, can become someone's permanent home. A story so unusual it almost sounds like fiction, but sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that really happened.
What do you think? Could you imagine living in an airport for years?
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.
Until next time, keep watching, keep wondering, and keep discovering the stories hidden in history.